Hello. Welcome everyone into my channel Everything PS with UMD. In today's tutorial, I am gonna start with you the After Effects course. The first tutorial in this course will be about getting to know After Effects. Stay tuned. As you first launched After Effects, it's really important to understand how project files are saved and how all the assets that you'll be working with should be organized on your hard drive before you ever bring them into an After Effects project. The first time you launch the application, going to focus on the work section and go to the upper left corner here and recent is selected. And that gives me a list of the recent projects that I've opened. Now obviously if you've never opened an After Effects project before, you probably won't have anything on your list. Now usually when I get started I click on the new project. But since I already created a project for us to work with, I'm gonna choose Open Project. When the Open panel pops up, navigate to your project files. If you don't have these project files, you can feel free to follow along using your own assets. In the Open dialog box, let's look at our project files. Notice I have 4 different After Effects project files. If you come over here on the right hand side, you'll notice under the size that none of them are particularly large. In fact, there are less than a megabyte of piece. Let's continue to look at our project. I'll click once on the Open and Save Projects file. And then go to the lower right hand corner and click the Open button to open that file. Now as you can see in this After Effects project, I've got quite a lot of things going on. If we just press the spacebar, we can preview the animation. Just press the spacebar to stop playback. And as you can see, I've got video files in there, I've got graphics in there. Let's take a closer look and figure out where these files actually are. If we go to the upper left corner of the interface, there's this area called the project panel. Click once in the project panel to make it active. And I know it's the project panel because it says the project in the upper left hand corner. This is the panel where you will import and organize all the assets that you'll be using in your different After Effects projects when you build a graphic. Builds like this are still built in something called a composition, which is represented here in the composition panel. And down here in the timeline, the composition is just a stack of layers that create this composite in the project panel. If we look, you notice I've already created a bunch of folders and organized several different elements. Like I have a music file, here we go. Now to the bottom I have video footage. If you click on any one of these files, you'll get information at the top of the project panel showing you a little bit about that file. This is a video file that should be larger than 1 megabyte. So let's do some further investigation by right-clicking on the video file and choose Reveal in Explorer. If you're on Windows, for Reveal in Finder if you're on the Mac. So if we look at the selected file, you can see it's the compressibility of the file in MP4 file. And its size is definitely larger than 1 megabyte. I'm gonna navigate back one folder in my browser. I'll click here. And you notice these are my project files, the web organized things on my hard drive. I created a folder called Assets and anything that I thought I was going to import into any of these After Effects projects. I put it in the Assets folder because After Effects projects don't embed external files. The reference where those files live on your hard drive. So whenever you're working in After Effects, it's always wise to keep all the elements you'd like to import into your project in one centralized location. Let's take a look at how the interface of After Effects is designed, so you can begin to get comfortable navigating the application. I'm going to be working on a project I've already built, but please feel free to follow along using any After Effects project. Now it's important to note there are many different panels, buttons, switches and options to the interface. In this video, we'll be focusing on the main elements of the interface to get you up and running quickly. To determine how the elements are laid out within the interface, we need to first set a workspace. So in the menu bar, I'm gonna go to Window Workspace and make sure the answer to the standard workspace. Different workspaces are designed for different job tasks. For example, if I were doing a text-heavy animation, I might use the text workspace. But again, we'll make sure we're in the standard workspace, and if your interface still doesn't look right, you can come down here and reset standard to its original same layout. Now I want you to come to the upper left portion of the interface and click once to make sure this panel's active. This panel is the project panel, and I know that because its name is in the upper left corner. Into the right of the name, you'll see 3 lines. If you click on those 3 lines, that'll give you access to the panel menu, which gives you settings specific to the individual panel. You'll notice these lines repeated throughout the different panels in the interface. Now the project panel is where you'll import and organize all the elements you'll be using to build your After Effects projects. Known this project of RT organized everything into folders. So I'm gonna go down to the bottom folder where it says video footage. And to look in that folder up, click the triangle to the left of the folder. And then just click once on the top video clip and that'll load up a preview here at the top of my project panel, and it also shows me some important settings about the format of that file itself. Now when you're working in After Effects and building elements, you'll be building things called compositions. At the top of the project panel I have the AA compositions folder. And in there I have the tour, the interface composition, so if I double click on that icon, notice now the timeline is active in the timeline in the composition panel, which is right here in the middle of the interface. Work together in conjunction. The timeline is divided up into two sections. The left side allows you to stack layers vertically one on top of the other. So if I want to select a layer, I can just click once on that layer and I know it's selected because it's bright white. I can turn its visibility off here on the left hand side by clicking on the eyeball or clicking it again to turn it back on. Now if I were to change where this layer appears vertically, I can click on that layer and drag it down to the bottom of the timeline. And when I let go, now you notice it's hidden under all the other layers. So we can't see it. If I want to undo the last thing I did, I can press Ctrl Z on Windows or NZ on the Mac to undo. You can press that multiple times to go back multiple steps. Now on the right side of the time like this determines where the layers appear over time. And you notice this blue line has an element on top that if I ever were top, it tells me it's the current time indicator. The menu that popped up is called a tooltip. And they're on by default. So if you're not sure what something is, just hovering over the top of it. Now the current time indicator determines exactly what frame we're going to be feeling in the composition panel. So if I click on this and drag left or right in the timeline, notice I'm viewing different frames in my composition panel. Notice also as I slide over different layers, we can see other elements in our composition. To know exactly what frame you're on, you want to look in the lower left corner of the composition panel here. This will tell you, or in the upper left corner of the timeline itself as you're working in the interface of After Effects. You might want to look in the upper right corner and info panel because you'll get little menu items letting you know what it was you last had. Pleated no, you may have noticed we're working in kind of a circle, starting with the project panel. Then to the timeline, then the composition panel. Now I'm on the right side in info panel. If we come all the way back up to the start of our circle here in the upper left area, we have the toolbar. The toolbar allows you to add different elements to your projects. For example, I can add a rectangle into here, or I could add cameras. I could add paintbrush strokes. You get a general idea. Honestly, 90% of the time when I'm working in After Effects, I'm using this leftmost tool here called the selection tool. And looking at the tooltip, I can see if I press V on my keyboard that will grab that tool. Now you may have noticed whenever you click on an object you've made it selected. So later one is selected when I double clicked on the composition, that is selected when I clicked in the timeline, that the panel is active. So when you're working in After Effects, it's very important that you pay close attention to where you're clicking and what is selected, because there will be different menu options made available depending on which panel or property is currently active. Well, many graphics can be created in After Effects. There will be plenty of times when you want to animate files created in other applications, like Photoshop files or Illustrator files. You know, photographs and video files. To get started, we're going to import a couple of different kinds of files. The first way you can import assets in After Effects is by going up to the menu bar and clicking on File. Go to Import and choose File. Navigate to wherever you save your project files, and you notice I'm in Assets folder saved right next to them. So I'm gonna open up the Assets folder in. Here we'll go ahead and import a couple of different assets. The first one I want to import is the Summer Camp Badge Illustrator file. So click once on that file and then down here at the bottom. I have a couple of different options. I want to make sure the Illustrator PDF sequence is not selected. And under Import, as I'll just import this as footage, which means it's just going to go ahead and flatten any possible layers that are involved with that Illustrator file. I don't need to create a composition, and I'll go ahead and just click the Import button. And now that files have been brought into the project panel, and notice it's automatically selected. And I'm getting a preview over a black background here in the project panel. If I want to preview that file larger, I can go ahead and just double click directly on the file. And that'll open here in the footage panel. Notice it looks like it's the composition panel, but it's really not. Seeing the white line under the footage panel. This is leading the preview and the footage panel. If I click this wide X to the left of the word footage, that'll go ahead and close that panel. Another way to import is to double click in the project panel. Never get back to that assets folder in this time. I'll import both the Blue Mountains and the Camper Mountains file. I'll click on the first one, hold down Shift and click on the next one, and they're both selected. Again, want to make sure multiple sequences not selected. And then I'll go ahead and just click import, and both those elements will be imported right here into the project panel. I could use drag and drop if I had an Explorer window or a Finder window. And I could drop things directly into the project panel, but another great way is to use the new composition from footage, but because I want to import some video footage and create a composition from that footage. So click on the new composition from footage button. And you guessed it, I'm gonna find a video clip, so I'll click once on this road trip camp MP4 file. And I'll click import, and not only has that file been imported, but I've also got a composition that matches those settings. And it's already created the first layer in the composition. So as you can see, there are plenty of different ways you can import files. And After Effects, the most important thing to remember is the fact that these files are not embedded with the project file. So you want to make sure to keep everything well organized on your hard drive before you bring it into your After Effects project. It's always a good idea to keep things organized whenever you're working in After Effects. In this part of this video, we're going to focus on how to keep things organized specifically in the project panel. So go to the upper left portion of the interface and click once on the project panel to make it active and looking at the different files. We have on the project panel, you'll notice we have a bunch of different kinds of files. The first way to keep things organized is to use the columns. If you go to the top portion of the project panel. Notice I have the name column. If we click on that, it'll organize itself from A to Z or Z to A. The next town over is labels. Labels assign colors to specific kinds of files. So if I click on the label column here, notice now the files are organized according to their label colors. I find it interesting that the JPEG and the vector art have the exact same label color. So I'd like to change the color for the labels for each one of these JPEG files. So I'll click on the Blue Mountains JPEG and hold down Shift, and I'll click on the Camper Mountains JPEG, little click on the label next to one of those files. And let's change it to a nice bright orange color. Now they both have switched to orange. And notice the order has changed because we still have things organized according to the label column. If we click directly on the type column, you get the idea, it's organized according to type. Now I'm going to double click on the word project in the upper left corner of the project panel to maximize that panel, because you can access additional columns just by Ctrl clicking or right clicking on the dark gray area here right next to the name. So here I'll go to columns, and noticed I could set up any kind of information I'd like to organize things by, like the end pointer, that out point, or the overall duration of the file. Now I don't really use any of these. I'll go ahead and just click outside of that menu to hide it. And I'll double click on the project panel one more time to make up panel smaller again. When you have multiple files selected as I have here in the project panel, notice you can manipulate those files at the same time with one click, like how we changed the label color since these are both selected. I can also just click on one of those files and drag them down to the new folder button here at the bottom of the project panel. And since both files were selected when I let go, they'll both end up in the folder. Notice the new folder is already highlighted. So I can just go ahead and name it. And I'll call this Images. And press enter. Now let's organize the video file. If I click on this road trip video file, sure enough, there's a preview in my project panel to add this to a folder. I'll just click and drag down to the new folder button. In here we can call this footage. And notice, even though I'm using caps for some and lower for others, it really doesn't change how things are organized, other than just the fact that they have capitalized or lowercase. Now the last one I want to create a folder for is the Summer Camp Illustrator file. So click on that and drag it down to the new folder button. In here I can go ahead and name this Vectors. Now, what happens when you have everything organized into folders, but you still want to be able to find those elements without having to open every single folder? Well, you can call up to the search area here in the project panel. So if I click once in the search area and start to type the word camp, any footage that has the word campaign, it is going to be popped up. Now it's really important that you clear out this field when you're done searching for things, so that you can see everything back in the project panel when you're finished. Now the last thing you might want to do is delete files. They could say there is an image that you're not working with anymore. Well, here I'll open Images folder and I'll click on the Camper Mountains JPEG and drag it down, not to the new folder icon, but over here to the trash icon. And when I let go, it's going to tell me, are you sure you want to remove this because it's being used in one composition? I'll go ahead and say delete. I noticed when I do that, now the image is gone out of my composition. So if I didn't want to do that, I can just press Ctrl+C on Windows or Command+C on the Mac to undo. But now you know how to actually delete files in your project panel. Now I have to say, getting in the habit of keeping the project panel well organized is a very good way to keep your creative life pain-free as you continue on your journey as an After Effects artist. Here we go, we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If the video was helpful for you, to hit on the like button and subscribe. Don't forget to turn the bell button on so you don't miss the next videos. And if you have time to learn more, look at the old videos on the channel. See you in a new video soon. Goodbye.